let's finish up with some conversation about the media, because boy, oh boy, did they lose their minds last night. Matt Vespa has the write-up over at Town Hall, and he says it perfectly. The MSNBC host completely imploded. Trump's win caused the panel on MSNBC to implode, especially Rachel Maddow, who took an academic approach to how this win symbolizes the United States' push towards authoritarianism. That's right. And he's not even overstating the case.
The big picture takeaway from that, and I don't mean to be, again, too dark, as you said, on this, but it is not, if we are worried about the rise of authoritarianism in this country, we are worried about potential rise of fascism in this country. If we're worried about our democracy falling to an authoritarian and potentially fascist form of government, the leader who is trying to do that is part of that equation. But people wanting that is a much bigger part of that equation. Right. And the American electorate is made up of two major parties. One of those parties has been flirting with extremism on the ultra-right for a very long time. They've brought them in a way that they haven't been central to Republican electoral politics ever before. And I know because I've been studying this. But once you have radicalized one major party so that those are the preferences of the people who adhere to your party, the leader is interchangeable. And yes, Trumpism is sometimes what we call it. MAGA movement is probably a better way to do it. But there is an authoritarian movement inside Republican politics that isn't being bamboozled by Trump. They are pushing Trump to get more and more extreme, because the more extreme things he says, the more they adhere to him. And that is coming from a very large proportion of the American right that adheres to the Republican Party. And that's why this is a Republican Party problem more than it is the problem of one man and his leadership.
I might surprise you right now, but I actually want to applaud Rachel Maddow for a moment, because she is the only one who is actually saying it. Saying what I've been telling you for weeks now, what they really mean when they warn against Donald Trump. See, Joe and Mika, they play cutesy with this stuff. And George Stephanopoulos and Jonathan Karl and Jake Tapper, they play cutesy. Trump is a threat to our country. Trump will destroy our Constitution if he gets into the White House. Trump will end elections as we know it. Going right, this is all the stuff they've been saying. And what have I told you when we talk about it? When we play the video and show you what they're saying, what have I been telling you? You know what I've been telling you. They're not afraid of Trump. They're afraid of you. Because Trump only gets into the White House if you vote for him. Trump only regains the power of the executive branch of our government if you vote for him. They're not really afraid of Trump. They're afraid of you refusing to vote the way they want you to vote. I need to say that again. Because Rachel Maddow is the first one to actually say it. Because they're all wussies. They don't want to say it. The only way Trump gets into the White House, the only way Trump gets the powers of the executive branch of government is if you vote for him. They're not afraid of Trump. They're afraid of you voting in the way that they don't want you to vote. In fact, they demand you vote another way. They expect you to vote another way. It goes all the way back to 2016 when they knew you wouldn't do this. They knew you wouldn't vote for Trump, right? Go look at all the great videos of them. There's no way Trump will be president. There's no chance that he'll be president. He's not going to be president. And then what happened? Because that's just how pissed off you were. And you still are, by the way. And Rachel Maddow at least said it. At least Rachel Maddow said it. This isn't about Trump. It's about you. And by the way, the only way Trump wins is if there are more of you than there are of them. That's how elections work. And they're terrified of the majority of the people in this country who dare to actually think that Rachel Maddow and Joy Reid and Larry O'Donnell and all the other people on that panel have really terrible ideas. And one other thing, she's so concerned about authoritarianism and violent extremism. Remember yesterday when we showed you the videos of the protesters who support Hamas and the terror attacks of October 7th? The support for Hamas and the pro-Palestinian terrorists who murder innocent Israelis and keep Israelis and Americans hostage to this day, their support is found in the Democratic Party. Joe Biden hasn't actually been able to bring himself to condemn the protests that he saw outside his window at the White House and on every major American street in this country and on college campuses. They can't condemn those protests because those protesters align themselves with his party. And she's worried about violent extremists on the right. What about the violent extremists on the left? That the leadership of the party that represents the left in America can't condemn. And authoritarianism? Last time I checked, authoritarianism is a single person in power exercising his or her will on the rest of the country outside the confines of a representative government that our Constitution supports. In other words, one person going into the White House and just deciding what he's going to do, despite the law of the land. That's authoritarianism. Where have I seen authoritarianism recently? Well, we had the legislative branch refusing to pass any kind of law with regard to student loan relief. We saw the judicial branch at the Supreme Court say that student loan relief is in fact unconstitutional the way it was employed. And we had Joe Biden, a single man in the White House, saying, well, screw it, I'm going to do it anyway. And he's bragging about it. Where else have I seen authoritarianism? I don't know. Let me see. We have laws right now demanding that the executive branch enforce our border and keep it secure from people illegally crossing. We have laws right now keeping people from crossing and staying illegally in this country. And the last I checked, one man sitting in the Oval Office right now has decided to ignore those laws and allow as many people as humanly possible into this country illegally. Feels kind of authoritarian to me. But Rachel Maddow, she's going to pick and choose which authoritarians she likes and which authoritarians she doesn't like. Meanwhile, her pal Joy Reid had plenty to say about not just Iowans, but really about the Republicans.
But, I feel like the important sort of data point, and Steve talks about it a lot. He's going to probably talk about it a little more tonight, is that these are white Christians. That this is a state that is overrepresented by white Christians that are going to participate in these caucuses, yes. Especially tonight. Earlier today, reached out to Robbie Jones, from the Public Religion Research Institute, knowing that we were going to talk about Iowa. And this
Robbie Jones of the Public Religious Research Institute, by the way, makes it sound like he's like Robbie. I love that it's Robbie, my pal Robbie. Makes it sound like it's this, completely down the middle, objective observer of religion. This guy hates religion and hates white evangelicals. Look at his track record. Look at the books that he's written. Look at the work that this organization does. All they do is try to push left-wing agendas and make it sound Christian. If you're really Christian in America, you should support abortion. That's their thesis. And the danger to America are those white evangelicals who don't want abortion to be the law of the land. That's who she's quoting right now, just so you have context.
This is a hyper evangelical white state. And he said the following to me: Iowa is about 61% white Christian. The country as a whole is approximately 41% white Christian. And in Iowa, we're talking about evangelical white Christians. And he said the following, because I asked him, what do they get out of supporting Donald Trump? Because he keeps losing, he keeps delivering losses and losses and losses. And he said the following: they see themselves as the rightful inheritors of this country, and Trump has promised to give it back to them. All the things that we think about electability, about, what are people gaming out, or none of that matters when you believe that God has given you this country, that it is yours, and that everyone who is not a white conservative Christian is a fraudulent American.
That's a hell of a stereotype NBC News is painting of Republican conservative Christian voters, especially people with white skin. Of course, she doesn't address the fact that in poll after poll after poll, Donald Trump is polling better with Black Americans in this country than any Republican ever has. And in fact, in the last election, more Republican men voted for Donald Trump than in the recent history of this country. She won't address that. And one other thing that she won't address, she says that Iowa is overrepresentative of white evangelical Christians. Guess what? South Carolina is in the Democratic primary is overrepresentative of Black Americans. The demographics of voters in the Democrat primary for South Carolina, because the vast majority of South Carolinians are actually Republicans. But when you go to the Democratic primary, it's something like 35% of the people voting in the Democratic Party for the primary in South Carolina are Black. And yet, right now, Black Americans account for between 10 and 12% of the American electorate. Would Joy Reid or any legitimate, respected political commentator of any political stripe be allowed to go on a cable news network and say, well, you know, South Carolina primary for the Democrats is overrepresentative of Black Americans? No, they would not be allowed to say that. Do you know why? Because that would be racist. And that's exactly what Joy Reid just did. Emma Jo Morris makes a fine observation. I always know how well Trump is doing by how suicidal the MSNBC panel is. And they were pretty suicidal last night. In fact, Joy Reid wasn't done with her slandering of white evangelical Christians. She also had something to say that I think you could interpret as being somehow supportive of Nikki Haley, but it wasn't. Not unless you're racist.
New Hampshire.
And I think to the point that you made, Steph, I mean, it's the elephant in the room. She's still a brown lady that's got to try to win in a party that is deeply anti-immigrant and which accepts the notion that you can say immigrants are poisoning the blood of our country. She's getting, birthered by Donald Trump. And I don't care how much the donor class likes her, which will ramp up a lot, the better she does in New Hampshire. So it's still a challenge. I don't see how she becomes the nominee of that party with Donald Trump still around. I can't picture it happening. Maybe it could happen. Ron DeSantis' only argument for staying in it is he's the white guy, that he can still make the appeal to white.
So let me just point out, I'm sure you already got it, but I just want to bring it home for you and point out what Joy Reid just did. Employee in good standing for NBC News. She just reduced the entire opposition to Donald Trump within the Republican Party, personified by Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, to this. Nikki Haley is a brown lady and DeSantis is a white guy. That's pretty much it. By the way, who wants to break it to her that Joe Biden, the Democrat president, is the whitest man in America? I mean, he's translucent. And the Democrats are rallying around one alternative right now to Joe Biden because no one thinks he's going to make it, and that would be Gavin Newsom. The fact that the Democrats continue to get away with this because of the ignorance of people like Joy Reid is pretty amazing. That said, the hair is looking great, Joy, I got to say. Beautiful. More from Rachel Maddow here, who refused to show her viewers Donald Trump's victory speech.
Just have to do a little bit of business just for a second. At this point in the evening, the projected winner of the Iowa caucuses has just started giving his victory speech. We will keep an eye on that as it happens. We will let you know if there's any.
By the way, I'm going to play this for you again, but this is an amazing thing where she won't even say Donald Trump's name. She just refers to him as the projected winner of the Iowa caucuses. But watch how she rationalizes literally keeping her viewers uninformed. The president of the former president of the United States, now the winner of the Iowa caucus in a historic victory, is giving his victory speech. And they are deliberately keeping that speech. When last I checked, you could call it news. She is deliberately keeping the news from their viewers. You want to see that speech? We're not going to show it to you. We're deliberately, purposefully keeping this news event from you. And watch how she rationalizes it.
At this point in the evening, the projected winner of the Iowa caucuses has just started giving his victory speech.
His name is Trump.
We will keep an eye on that as it happens. We will let you know if there's any news made in that speech, if there's anything noteworthy, something substantive and important. The reason I'm saying this is, of course, there is a reason that we and other news organizations have generally stopped giving an unfiltered live platform to remarks by former President Trump. It is not out of spite. It is not a decision that we relish. It is a decision that we regularly revisit. And honestly, earnestly, it is not an easy decision. But there is a cost to us as a news organization of knowingly broadcasting untrue things. That is a fundamental truth of our business and who we are. And so his remarks tonight will not air here live. We will monitor them and let you know about any news that he makes.
This is a woman who spent 3 years talking about Russian collusion and Donald Trump apparently going to Moscow and hiring prostitutes to urinate on a bed that supposedly former President Barack Obama had used when he visited Russia. And she's now lecturing us about the cost to their news agency when they allow untruths to be broadcast. And what they're really saying here is you, the viewer, you, the American people, you can't be trusted to hear Donald Trump because you might actually believe him. The most telling thing in this entire outrageous, disgusting rationalization for censorship was this.
Just started giving his victory speech. We will keep an eye on that as it happens. We will let you know if there's any news made in that speech.
We will let you know if there's any news made in that speech. We'll let you know. We'll watch it. We'll determine what is newsworthy and what you are allowed to see. Otherwise, you'll continue to hear us talk about how Iowa is too white and too Christian, and Republican voters are authoritarians, and they hate Nikki Haley because she's brown, and will only consider Ron DeSantis because he's the other white guy. There, I've just summed up the news and analysis that NBC News decided to deliver to their viewers at MSNBC, rather than letting them see Donald Trump give his speech. And let's finish with this, because I think it's worth showing you again. This is the speech that MSNBC refused to let their viewers see. This is the speech they deemed to be unnewsworthy.
Well, I want to thank everybody. This has been some period of time, and most importantly, we want to thank the great people of Iowa. Thank you. We love you all. What a turnout, what a crowd. And I really think this is time now for everybody, our country, to come together. We want to come together, whether it's Republican or Democrat or liberal or conservative. It would be so nice if we could come together and straighten out the world and straighten out the problems and straighten out all of the death and destruction that we're witnessing. That's practically never been like this. It's just so important. And
your typical MSNBC viewer will probably say, why does Trump have to be so divisive? Why is he always dividing us as a nation? And it's those red states and blue states and decrying Democrats and decrying liberals and pitting one person against another. Why is Trump like that? Why is he like that? Why does he keep dividing us? That's what your MSNBC viewer will think to themselves and say, because MSNBC viewers are not allowed to see Donald Trump call for this country to unify. Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, let's get together and fix the problems that we're seeing in this country before it's too late. They're not allowed to see Donald Trump say that because Rachel Maddow knows better. Because Rachel Maddow will let you know if, in her opinion, any news was made. And so her viewers didn't see Donald Trump saying that. But I'm not going to complain about it, because the more MSNBC does that, and CNN and ABC and all of them, and I do mean all of them, the more they do that, the more you'll come to us right here on this show and on all of the town hall sites, Town Hall Hot Air, Red State, PJ Media, Twitchy, and Bearing Arms. That's where you're watching us right now, and we hope you continue as this election season heats up big time.